Greetings. We're about to start. So in the 10th months of the war, we've learned to start in any condition. And today we'll talk about what's going on outside these walls. So what's going on with the process of documenting damages in different locations. And today we'll focus on Mykolaiv. My name is Julia Minshev and I will be the moderator of this event. And we will be starting. So thanks for coming here. Thanks that despite the explosions you are here, and I give the floor to Mr. Kristensen, the head of the EU Anti-Corruption Initiative.
Welcome to all of you. We are very proud here at the EUACI to host this event today on Mykolaiv. Welcome especially to our distinguished guest from Mykolaiv, the head of the Regional Military Administration, the mayor of Mykolaiv, head of the Oblast Council. It's great to have you here. Also, of course, welcome to the Deputy Minister, to the Danish Ambassador, to the experts that are with us today. This is yet another morning with Russian missile attacks across Ukraine. Also Kyiv, Mykolaiv were hit. I suggest that we if I may ask you to raise up for 1 minute of silence for the possible victims of today's attacks and all the Ukrainians who have lost their lives due to Russian aggression. Thanks. Thank you very much. So allow me to go back to the issue we're going to discuss today. Since Mykolaiv became an integrity city back in July, we have been working with the mayor and his staff, trying to identify how we best could help Mykolaiv in the reconstruction process to ensure that it would be transparent and with accountability and integrity. And one of the tools we are going to provide is what we're going to talk about today. It's a digital platform with data of damaged buildings, infrastructure in Mykolaiv, which we see as the first building block of a digital platform that can ensure a reconstruction process with transparency. In Mykolaiv, I think it can be a very important instrument, and we are looking forward to the Kyiv School of Economics, who will make a presentation today. We also hope that this tool can somehow be used as best practice for other cities in Ukraine and can feed into the national GIS portal as well. We have been looking very much forward to hearing more about this tool today. I will not take more of your time. I think it's more important to listen to you than to me. I know there's one more important guest who would like to say a few welcome remarks. So, could I give the floor back to you, Julia?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. And I'll give the floor to Ambassador Mikkelsen.
Thank you very much. And I do apologize for not being able to join you this morning. Thank you very much for inviting me to address you this morning on this occasion. And you might ask, what is the Danish ambassador doing here, and why I'm addressing you this morning. And then just to make sure that everybody are aware, there is a Denmark-Mykolaiv partnership, and this was sealed by the Danish Prime Minister and the President of Ukraine back in April. 1 month earlier, the President of Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky, had addressed the Danish Parliament, and in his speech he said Denmark should assume the patronage for the rebuilding and the recovery of the city of Mykolaiv, and then he added the city of shipbuilders. And then I knew immediately why Denmark had been chosen, because we have been doing things in the maritime sector in Mykolaiv for quite some time, so it made a lot of sense. So far, there has been very little reconstruction because of the conditions. It's only 3 weeks ago that shelling stopped. There are still shelling in the Oblast, I know, but now the front line has moved further to the east. So, but in the meantime, we have been supplying equipment and and items for winterization of the city. And I had the opportunity to visit Mykolaiv just 3 weeks ago, and it was good to see the huge stacks of particle boards for boarding off windows. I saw equipment for the water supply. I saw heavy construction equipment that was in use, and this was donated by Denmark. So we have started the process with a strong focus on humanitarian assistance, and on top of that, we are looking now into to a more long-term perspective on how Denmark and Mykolaiv, and not only the city, but also the oblast, can work together in the time to come. Later on today, we're going to have the mayor, the governor, and the head of the regional administration meeting with the Danish business community in Ukraine, because one of the most important things that Denmark can do is to create jobs and opportunities in Mykolaiv, and I hope that this can be a starting point. And I also want to say that it made a big impression on me too. I had been in Mykolaiv quite a few times before the war, and I know the city quite well, and this was my first visit after the full-scale Russian aggression. And I saw with my own eyes how the Russian aggressors have brought death and destruction to this peaceful city. And I think we all know the image of the regional administrative building with the enormous hole in the middle, and where 38 people lost their life. And I think this will be engraved in my memory forever. It does not go away, and I think anyone seeing that photo or seeing this in real life will bring it along for the rest of his or her life, at least in my case. But my memory from my visit in Mykolaiv is not only about death and destruction, it's also about resilience, perseverance, and a strong civil spirit. And first and foremost, I could feel the unwavering will and determination to start the reconstruction and recovery process. And both you, Mr. Mayor, and you, Mr. Governor, and you, Madam Chairwoman of the Regional Council, you all radiating this spirit, and that was so good to feel. And I think this is the determination that has brought you to Kyiv today for the seminar, and to listen to the results of the assessment of the damages and the needs. And I look forward to hear that presentation. There's no doubt that there's going to be an enormous price tag for the reconstruction of Mykolaiv, because I've seen it, and just seeing it is enough to know that this will be big. And I can promise you that we will do what we can to support you in the recovery and reconstruction process. As you might have heard, some of you, just yesterday we had a new government in Denmark after parliamentary elections, and I've already been in contact with the incoming foreign minister. I can tell you that Denmark's support for Mykolaiv will continue. There's no doubt, and there are many reasons for that. But I think your city was under shelling for almost 8 months, and you stood your ground. There was a lot of, as I said, perseverance and will to survive. And it's not a coincidence that your city is called not only the city of shipbuilders, it's also called the city of heroes. And I can tell you, Danes are proud to be the partner of the city of heroes. I wish you a productive morning, and I look forward to see some of you, or hopefully most of you, later on today at 5 o'clock at my residence for the reception, where there will be hopefully a strong presence of representatives of Danish businesses who can perhaps set up a shop or businesses in Mykolaiv. Thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mikkelsen, and thanks again from Ukrainian people for this committed partnership that we have in the face of Denmark.
And I will switch into Ukrainian. So if you are watching it without the interpretation, then you should have switched into interpretation. So this morning was not so typical for Kyiv, but already had been typical for Mykolaiv, because it's only in the last few weeks it's been quiet in Mykolaiv. But the mayor of Mykolaiv, Oleksandr Sienkevych, will tell more about it, and I would like to give the floor to him so that he would present the work on what the city had done in documenting the damages. Then we will hear the report with the independent assessment made by the project Russia will pay, and then we'll discuss. So we can start. Colleagues, welcome. And from the beginning of this war, we've started documenting the places of missile strikes. First it was just on a sheet of paper, and then we thought, well, it would be good if we could use the geoinformation system which the city had developed jointly with the SoftPro company for the last 3 years, I think. 3 years, or has it been 4? So we have one of the best geoinformation system, and we have added the layer with the aerial picture of the city, and now we can see how it is with the best details, better than the Google Maps. So in these years we've been filling in different layers. So if you don't understand, the GIS is a map, detailed map, and on top of it you can add lots and lots of layers, and the layers contain different information. For example, that could be the utilities or masts like cell masts. And when we started talking to the government of Denmark with regards to the assistance, we have asked funding the development of the additional layer which would contain all the information on the map of Mykolaiv, so that we could see the situation as it is. You can see that the city of Mykolaiv has been shelled almost daily. Before Kherson has been deoccupied. We had only 46 days without shelling. So if we put it on the grid, that you can see that in almost every cell of this grid, well, there was a missile strike. In the Zavodsky area of Mykolaiv, there's not a single military facility on site. I can reassure you, this is just residential quarters, the city center, markets, shops, but we don't have any military unit there. And it just shows that the Russians do not intend to quote-unquote demilitarize and denazify. They have the intent for the genocide of the Ukrainians. They want to kill as many people as possible. And I would say that 40 or 50% which have fallen there, these are unconventional cluster munitions which are aimed to kill people, the personnel. So they're not anti-tank or anti-building. For example, here we have the Victory Square, and one of the strikes landed in a bus stop, and 12 people died instantly on the spot, and 64 were injured.
You can just imagine that there was shrapnel, which is a finger long, and it is getting out of the body with part of the flesh and the bone. Those are not just words of severe injury. This is a very substantial injury. Those are usual pedestrians who were close to the market or to the bus stop and so on. So how is the system working? We can select the layer where we have these demolitions, and after that we can switch between them and to sort them or to filter them by the level of severity. For instance, here we can see them to the left in different colors. We can find separate categories or all of them together, and we can select any place, for instance, what we prefer. Let us zoom it in the center, downtown. Yep, and here let us click something which is red, for instance, the red spot. So to the left we can see the information about the object. You can see that this is the street, Shevchenko Street 17. Those are multi-apartment residential buildings. The square is approximately 150 square meters. The damage is approximately 20 square meters. There are 8 apartments, and the damage was done to the windows and facade. But still it is not verified. So let us show something which we have, which is verified. No, we will provide the full verification, and Maxim Nefedov will tell about that. Well, we can go to Mykolaiv, we can check, then you will take the specially trained people, and then we will have the fully verified object. So I may say that we are now cooperating with the UNICEF and the government of Denmark and the company of Kyiv about the future of Mykolaiv city. That is the creation of the new master plan and the reconstruction of Build Back Better. Because we decided to use these GIS, and when our colleagues from Italy saw it, they said that there are such systems exist in the they are not that numerous, and only in some of the European cities. So this geoinformation system will be really helping a lot. And when we are speaking about the losses and about the costs and expenses and the reparations which Russia will pay after our victory, that is the guideline to calculate those losses and costs. And in fact, I'd like to express my gratitude to the European Anti-Corruption Initiative and the government of Denmark, and personally to Mr. Ambassador for this help. And I do hope that our work will become an example for other Ukrainian cities, and it will help us to be one of the first in the state and public funding for the recovery and reconstruction of Ukraine. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. So as for verification, we decided that we need a third-party verification, including, that is why we invited for the processing of different visual types of data which we can get to have the third-party understanding what is damaged in the city. It was done by the project Russia Will Pay. I think that all of the people who are now here in the studio together with us, or who are listening to us, really have something to do with the recovery, because this is the flagship product in Ukraine out of these ones. So I am inviting Maxim Nefedov, the leader of this project, to tell what you got to know about Mykolaiv. What are the direct losses of the infrastructure and expenses, and what your data witness about? Hello. Thank you for the invitation. The project Russia Will Pay, Damaged UA, has started and has been launched in February 2022 to collect, verify and assess the losses and damages inflicted by Russian aggression, and also the needs in the recovery and restoration, which would allow us to plan new, better and more modern Ukraine. We are dealing with two big spheres. The first of them is in fact the work with the government on the methodology, on the data collection and the regular reports production. One of them was just issued yesterday with the overall figure of losses of war and costs of war, almost $136 billion, and we started a very active cooperation with on the type of drones and satellites to totally digitalize all of the damaged parts of the city, and to help verify and add to the information which is collected from the places. Here I can only say some compliments to Mykolaiv and confirm Oleksandr's words, because as of the digital readiness, the city is one of the leaders. Unfortunately, this situation is not relevant for the whole Ukraine. It used to be before the war, and now lots of settlements are in fact grinded to dust. And in fact, we can't even speak about any of the digital tools we can't even speak about any of the basic services, power supply, water supply, because I totally agree it is just an attempt to conduct genocide of Ukrainian people. What's the objective of our project? What are restrictions which we have? Well, of course, we would like to provide the high-quality analysis and independent verification. We would like to help find any of the errors and mistakes of the manual input of the information because of the fog of the war which exists. This is the objective reality of any military and armed conflict. And of course, we would like to have a high-quality evidence base both for the potential courts against the Russian aggressor and also for the reimbursement and compensation for the Ukrainian citizens, businesses, cities, and so on. And of course, this information has to be used for the intellectual shaping of the recovery plans, which are planned on the data, not on some obsolete Soviet principles. Which, in fact, restrictions do we have? In comparison with what we could see in the movies about James Bond, the satellites are not omni-powerful. We have the best commercially accessible satellite shots, and some of the smaller objects of frontal damage just physically cannot be seen there. It's obvious that after we get the shot, the footage, very often we can have clouds on that, and some of the objects can be covered with the plants or snow or smoke because of the shelling. All of that needs to be taken into account. And of course, the shots show the external damage. They cannot show the damaged or destroyed equipment. They cannot show the internal defects. So it's the normal situation. We finally identified 43% of the buildings which the city began to collect since the beginning of the manual collection or in the Excel format. In some of the categories, this figure is approximately 90%, where those objects are rather big, like the administrative buildings or some business buildings. But finally, we managed to digitalize all of the buildings in the city. This is more than 87,000 of objects, and all of them are in the further work in the GIS filing, which was developed by the and is developed by the Ministry of Recovery. Well, I would rename it. I would say this is the Ministry of the Recovery of Infrastructure and Territories. Sorry, I did not know the new name still. So the register of the damaged and destroyed property there as well. So of course this work will go on. So the objective of those who are present here and those who are watching us, for it not to be extended for 29 years, like in the case of attack of Iraq against Kuwait, but to make it much quicker and maybe even more substantially quicker. So how did we process the visual data? We got the shots of Maxar, we combined them looking at different dates, we cut the clouds out and made a combined work with several layers and different dates. Then we worked with the Ukrainian startup Neuromarket, which developed a proprietary model of machine learning, which is just named artificial intelligence, which just processed this data and identified there some of the buildings with a very high level of precision. And after that, we were actively working with the company of Zensus, the Danish company with Ukrainian origin, which in fact helped us to identify separate objects and to combine them with the city data which we already have in the GIS and the ones which have already existed in the format of Excel tables and notifications and messages about demolished objects, and also to save, preserve, and analyze the data. The analysis process was very complicated. I think it's more interesting for the technical experts. I will not delve deeper into that, but I'd like to say separately that if we speak about the city objects in the GIS, then we managed to find almost 3/4 of them, of those which can be identified on the map. Well, of course, not all of the messages about demolition and ruinations are like this. Some of them don't have the very specific addresses, or maybe they cover bigger areas, so we need to make them more specified according to the factors and verifiers which were just mentioned by Julia. Then these data was just having the comparative analysis, where we showed some of the polygons of the buildings in blue and the messages from the city in green, where we tried to compare them and to understand which are coinciding, which maybe are coinciding, which are not coinciding at all. So we need to find out if there are any of the mistakes of data input there. So closer to this menu, we can see the squares, and there is the school number 51 and the place where the shelling took place, the place of the shell. So you can see it's written school 51. So the explosion took place in the building, in one of the parts of the school. By the way, now with the technical report, it is considered to be inappropriate for recovery. So we'll need to demolish it and then reconstruct it again. By the number of the school children, this is the second school in Mykolaiv. Approximately 1,500 of children were studying there, and it was planned that up there will be the future part of the city, the northern part, where the construction sites are located. And also I would like to tell how we used it. We had PTZ cameras in Mykolaiv city, and Romania and the sister city Brashov gave us a gift of 10 cameras like that, which we installed on the highest on the top places in Mykolaiv. So when the explosions took place in Mykolaiv, we set them up, those cameras, to find out the coordinates. And when we made the line from the camera to the place of the explosion, and another one at the cross section, we could find the place of the shelling up to 1 meter. So all of the special services, like the State Emergency Service, could get to the address without even notifications. Thank you. In fact, it shows that digital technologies are not just voyeurism and the attempt to look at the ruined objects from above, but it's a real tool which is used everywhere. Of course, if we have the managerial will for that and the wish of the superiors. So I think it could be a very nice example for other cities. Separately, I'd like to speak about the specification in the classification of the types of the buildings, because it's obvious that in lots of the cities the level of digitalization is not perfect, and this is the example which could be interesting for other city mayors, where we compared the polygons which we identified in the combination of AI and manual annotators, and after that we united and combined them with the information from Google Maps, from Bing, from OpenStreetMap, to define the parameters of some of the buildings. Not only the area, the square meters, but also the altitude, which is necessary to assess the price, the cost, and the scale of ruination. Well, of course, this is the additional approach. We need to have the proper GIS, but while it is being created at the majority of areas, this is the mechanism which can totally work. And the final control and data publication is how this data is presented, the data of our research, and how it can be given to the and transferred to the GIS of the city, which was mentioned above by Oleksandr, and then it can be integrated into the national geoinformation system. So you can see the polygons here as well, where we showed the buildings which thankfully were not damaged, and the ones which were, the types of those buildings, their characteristics, specifications, the categories of damage, and the link to the picture of this very building before the war on the Google Maps, and unfortunately now during the war. with the registration and documentation of the ruination. So now what is the most interesting for the journalists? A very specific figure, how we can assess the damage. According to the calculations conducted by the city authorities, this assessment of costs of losses is approximately 852 million euro. This is the data again which was collected by the city and which was assessed by our project. Out of them, at the satellite shots, you can see the damaged objects for about 220 million of euro. The main difference, let me repeat, are the frontal or the facade damages of, first of all, multi-storied buildings, which just technically cannot be seen on the shot from above, and the business losses, because some of the damages can be identified, and lots of demolition cases and just destroyed equipment just unfortunately cannot be identified with this method physically. And at this screenshot you can also see, in fact, the identified buildings which were not damaged and the buildings which were, and the attempt to integrate them with the dotted data collected by the city with the blue and the red dots of the damaged and non-damaged objects. There are several objects which are not included into our work of the GIS. That is, first of all, some of the categories of grids, which we assessed separately according to the data of different line ministries and by indirect assessment. Well, of course, the residential blocks were damaged most of all. Unfortunately, it's not a surprise that at the national level, the damage of the residential block is approximately $52 billion out of 136 billion of all of the damage. And here you can see that the damage is approximately 400 million euro, and the efficient area of the damaged residential blocks is almost 360 million square meters. What do I mean efficient area? Well, of course, we did not calculate the overall area of all of the buildings which have at least some damages, but the part which really needs to be reconstructed. We don't have duplication. Because if the shell or the fragment of the shell came was strike or hit the building, then it's one apartment, and if unfortunately the building has to be fully demolished or ruined, then we took the whole area of the building. According to the data of the local authorities, 4 objects were damaged, and these social centers could be identified on the photos. I wouldn't say that the sum of money is very important here, but the cynicism of the approach and the ruination which were inflicted to the social objects. That's what's important, where the military cannot be there. There can't be any military or the objects of critical infrastructure, even thinking that they can be the aims for the strikes. As for the educational sphere, 98 objects were damaged for 45 million euro. These figures are confirmed by the Ministry of Education and Science. Out of them, 18 are the bigger ruined objects which you can physically see. Some of the pictures from the media can be seen here as well, and this is a totally barbarian approach to shellings, because just to say that in the professional lyceum or in the school there could be any of the tanks, honestly speaking, the pictures are showing that it's just ridiculous.
I would like to mention this particular picture, you see, talking about the full-scale appraisal and how possible it and whether it's possible. So the top right photo, this is a school which had been 130 years old yesterday. So if we count just the cheapest construction materials to reconstruct it, like the formed concrete and so on. That's one money. But if we want to actually restore it as the cultural heritage, to restore the facade from the original stone, then I mean the price will be much higher. And same with other historical buildings. So some buildings, some sites might be quite old, and their leftover value is quite low, so to say. But if we consider how much it takes to reconstruct it to its full, then it would be different. So I wanted to say that there are different methodologies for the calculation, and some are not very precise. Look, I don't want to go into the methodology because usually we lose the audience at that moment. But briefly, in the project we use the methodology approved by the World Bank, and it's used in the so-called Ardennes reports, and the World Bank has already started doing it for the second time upon the request of the Ukrainian government. So they calculate the so-called restoration value. So regardless of the actual property cost, whether it was too big, too little, I mean anything that had been destroyed has to be restored. This is like the casco insurance contract for your car. If your car is destroyed, you want to have the car restored to its full, and you don't want to hear about the depreciation and maybe that car was not energy efficient, so let's have a Tesla. You want to have the property as it had been. So when we talk about cultural heritage site, it's another important thing, and in the reports they are accounted doubly because the cultural heritage sites, the architecture sites of different level of regional value and of national value, they also are accounted by the Ministry of Culture. So there is a first one account in terms of their functional purpose, and let's imagine the building is a school or a hospital, it's the function, but also it has the additional cultural value on top, and it's accounted separately. On some sites the increased requirements are used. Let's imagine, this is a hypothetical scenario, if we ever need to restore the nuclear power station, we need to consider the new security and safety standards, because they have been updated since 1970s when the stations were built. And for example, Poland has been constructing an NPP recently. So usually if you talk about these facilities and sites, then we also have the additional value which accounts for the improved requirements. So there have been already quite a lot of these sites, and they are in different spheres, in shipbuilding, agriculture, demining, and so on and so on. And of course it takes a lot of meticulous work, and of course the final figures will come from the specific rebuilding project, but at least the order of magnitude gives the impression how much money is needed, and that's why this methodology is used by all the organizations, the IMF, the World Bank, and all the leading media. That's why we can vouch for these figures. So on healthcare, 26 million euro of damages. This is what we can see in the picture. So the total is up to 200 million euro for healthcare, and of course, I mean, hospitals is not just a pile of rubble. It's also equipment And I mean, the hospital, first and foremost, is about doctors, it's about the staff who save lives. In culture, tourism and sport, here you see, for example, a crater in a football stadium, and here it's not about the sum of 11 million euros, but it's just the example of the really absurd and indiscriminate destruction. Because, I mean, it's difficult to believe that this football pitch helps this absurd target of denazification of Ukraine. The administrative building, this notorious Oblast administration building where dozens of people died, and it's one of the main facilities which was damaged, and it's about 12 million euro to restore it. So the utilities, water and heating supply are a huge issue for Mykolaiv, because you probably have heard that as we have interrupted water supply, we use water from the Salt Lake, and it's a problem because the citizens can only get technical water but not potable, and also salt corrodes all the pipework in the city. So essentially Mykolaiv water supply should be essentially built from scratch. Everything has to be replaced due to saltwater corrosion. And also I have to say that there are 26 heating stations and 5 central heating points which had been damaged, and for the businesses it's up to 300 million euro in damages, and 1/3 of them can be seen even visually, and the port is accounted separately because a lot of vehicles have been damaged there, and it probably would be about 150 to 100 million euro. And the energy infrastructure is first and foremost the energy distribution facilities, the oil depot which had been damaged. Overall it would be about 9 million euro. So as you see, it all sums up to quite a high number, 860 million euro, which might seem quite a lot, absolutely, but if we look at direct losses of Ukraine overall, 136 billion, you see that it's fully matching the national volume. So this is the example when the macro assessments align with the micro assessments side by side. And at the very end, I would like to say what are the next steps planned. The steps we do jointly with the Ministry of the Infrastructure in order to continue this work. Our objective is to digitize all the raions of Ukraine. Wherever it's possible, we use satellite imagery, and when it's not possible, we have been sending out drones to take pictures of about 100 settlements. They already have been appraised and evaluated, and it all also sums up, hopefully by to be used later by the partners, and also it's on the portal, and it's in sync with the National Archive. And it all feeds our objective to have Russia paying for all this, both directly through court decisions and also indirectly, so that we would rebuild Ukraine based on the Build Back Better principle fast. And we say thanks to everyone who took part in this project. Thank you, Max. Thanks to all your team. So you mentioned that this is not just an isolated exercise, and similar assessments have been done in other cities. In particular, there was such initiative from the Ministry for Community and Territory Development, and I would like to invite Deputy Minister Luker, and he will tell what do we do with these figures next. How do we make our mind around them? Good morning. In order to plan anything, especially post-war recovery, we have to have good data. That is the key for the preparation of any plan, of any project, and what's important to prepare the financial resource for the implementation of these projects. September 9th, 2022 was the day when we presented the joint report with the European Commission and the World Bank Group, the RDNA, Rapid Damage Needs Assessment. Rapid Damage Needs Assessment is a long report which covered all the regions of Ukraine, and according to the data we've had as of 1st of June 2022, the direct damages from physical destruction to the infrastructure, including businesses, for Mykolaiv Oblast, that figure had been $3.7 billion as of 1st of June. And it's clear that there had been shelling and combat activities going on since June, so the figure is much higher. So out of these 3.7 billion, according to the calculations of the World Bank, the lion's share is in the city of Mykolaiv. So the figure of 852 million by the Kyiv School of Economics is quite close to reality, but I think it's undercalculated because it only considers physical damages. If we want to build back, we should build back better. If we want to restore water supply, we want to build the water supply to a better level than it had been at, and that's why it's definitely over 350 million euro for Mykolaiv, and these figures are objective, built on objective data. As of January the 1st, we'll start preparing the next report, the report 2.0, and it will include the damages calculation and the needs for restoration broken down by regions and by sectors, and it will account the period from February 24th, 2022 to February 24th, 2023. In order to prepare that report, we need to have data, and portals such as GIS, they are really useful, because even in the government of Ukraine they also started this work just scratching figures on the piece of paper, and then they switched to using Excel tables, and then finally we've come to the national GIS system supported by the EUACI, and we really appreciate their support. But once again, this national system will be built using data accumulated locally, so it will be fully integrated with the Mykolaiv system and other GISs. Ideally, to plan, the region, if they want to plan their reconstruction, then every city, every region should deploy a GIS like this one. Next, what do we have to do? The Parliament has adopted the law in summer, the law which says that at the level of the government there should be unified plan for regional restoration, and it should aggregate different regional plans, including regional level cities. So it's possible to have the recovery plans for the cities, big cities like Mykolaiv, and these will be used in preparing the pipeline of funding. What would be the priority? What would be the procedure to restore the cities to the pre-war level using the Build Back Better principle? So this is the plan. Of course, the financial resource is going to be different for different cities. For the city of Mykolaiv, there is the systemic partnership with the government of Denmark, which has already expressed support and has already been providing the first resources. Once again, to plan the funding for Ukraine, the partners need to have clear understanding. What is the need for the city of Mykolaiv? What should be the priorities and the timeline? And these are this is the homework that every city and every region should do. But first, in order to do that exercise, you need to have objective data. That's why now we are auditing the damages. We are doing objective calculations of the needs. This is the preparatory stage, but it helps us be fully transparent, accountable, and have integrity for both the Ukrainian citizens and the international partners, because only on this foundation of trust we will be able to get support and to attract the resource. So this is absolutely the correct way to go, and we are fully supporting this. Now we are collecting the data, and then we will prepare the specific step-by-step plan, and this will be one of the top priorities for 2023. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Vitaly. Yes, feel free to add, feel free to speak up. Yeah, sure.
Thank you, everyone, and hello, everyone. What we are speaking about as well, because of course this is a very nice thing which we can use both at the level of the city and the region. It will help the overall audience, but very important point are the environmental losses and damages of our region. Our region used to be very environmental and ecological. We had a long-term plans on the development of tourism. According to the preliminary calculation, the losses and damage in environmental sphere is approximately 23 billion hryvnia. First of all, emissions in the air because of the explosions, because of the poisonous substances in the missile, because of the burnt forests, approximately 4,000 hectares, the destroying of unique meadows. So we need to add these environmental damages to the direct losses because of the damaged objects, because we will never recover them. They are directly connected with the incoming shells and the types of missiles and shells. Thank you. And I can also add that to implement this potential, we need to take into consideration the need of the demining of all of those ecological parks, and this is a very long-term program, which is the multi-billion one. We need to take that into consideration because the ecological and agrarian and touristic potential of Mykolaiv region is one of the key ones for the future recovery, not only infrastructure but economic one. Yes, we will never be able to start anything without demining. So I think that as we already beginning the discussion, let us start it. If you need to leave, we can let you go. Thank you for the opportunity, for finding an opportunity to join us. Vitaly, you will be able to leave when you want to. If you have some time, you can stay. Hanna Zanozieva, the head of Mykolaiv Regional Council, please take the place here. And Taras Pagh from the Agency of Renovation and Reconstruction. He's an independent expert who assessed the needs of Mykolaiv city. So, now we are beginning the discussion Let us discuss it with the portrait of the city. We can see what's the price of the recovery according to the independent assessment, and it's obvious that it is important to use this information further on for prioritization and the better understanding of the focus, what we should work on during the several next years and the several decade. Also, I'd like to provide a very short presentation for Taras Big from the Agency of Reconstruction and Development, who has also conducted the independent assessment of the urgent needs for the restoration of the city. Could you please tell which are the most critical points out of what you heard, and then we will create our discussion around that. Okay, thank you. Hello, our agency has been working with Mykolaiv City Council and with the Embassy of Denmark in the coordination work on the help and support, and there were dozens, if not hundreds, of calls, communication calls, according to which we can create the map of needs of the city and according to the collected data of damage. So we started with who we are doing that for. What will be the population of Mykolaiv after the war, after the victory, and after Ukraine is liberated? As far as we know, according to the assessment of the authorities, the population has decreased twice. So, but we have some of the factors. First of all, the examples of the cities like Bucha, Trostenets. Today, approximately 80% of population came back to the city in comparison with the time of the pre-war invasion. The sociologists say that they are really surprised how high and optimistic are the indicators for the residents of Mykolaiv, who believe into the victory and it will impact their comeback. Two more factors are the IDPs, the people from the destroyed villages of Mykolaiv region, and secondly from Kherson region, because this the most dangerous zone, they moved from Mykolaiv to Kherson. We can see how the city is affected by Russian shelling, so some of the people will move to Mykolaiv. We need to look at the lower indicator of population, but we should speak about the full-scale renovation and recovery of the city as it used to be. So we decided to divide this work into two tracks. First of all, urgent needs. This is where we speak that, in fact, this is about survival, the survival of the city and residents during the winter. And secondly, the long-term recovery and the development of the city. That is years ahead, and for that we should prepare the strategy or the recovery plan, which was mentioned by Mr. Ivan Lukeria. We should take them and adopt the master plan of the city and different policies from the special development to the transport infrastructure and so on. So an important point here is that those urgent needs, which are already been done, has to be flexibly transferred into the long-term plan of the development of the city. As for the urgent needs, we have the power supply, and not a single city is the exclusion, because there is the threat to have the full blackout, so we need to provide the power generators. It's one of the key needs. Secondly, the water supply. As for the water supply, we need the water canal from Kherson region. These water pipes were destroyed because they were under occupation, so we had to take it from Pivdenny Bu, which is very concentrated as for saline. So unfortunately, we need to restore the water pipeline from Kherson region, and the heating issue is connected with that because we need power generators, pipes, modular boilers, and so on. The urgent need is healthcare because there are some of the damaged and destroyed hospitals close to the front line, so the workload on this sector is very substantial. So the beginning steps of the recovery of healthcare need to become a long-term work on the development of this sector in the city. The same with the residential accommodation and blocks. We're speaking about the taking away the rubble and destroyed buildings to make decisions how we can use this construction materials, and also the recovery of the damaged roofs, and also the plates which are which we need to and of course we need to replace the windows and to install the OSB plates, and also the system of notifications and maybe the creation of municipal guard. When we speak about the long-term recovery, we have 8 sectors. First of all, the infrastructure, which is connected to with the short-term restoration of water supply and heating and so on. We need to use the principle of resilience of this infrastructure, energy efficiency, ecological, environmental recovery, which was mentioned above, the implementation of digital solutions and inclusion and barrierlessness for all of the citizens, all of the residents of the city. Then the green transition, which is connected with these damages, because we can reboot lots of the processes in Mykolaiv. So green transition can be one of the principles of the work, which will be the throughput through all of the sectors, beginning with a radical decrease of the dependency from the fossil steel to the expansion of the green zones and the creation of bicycle lanes and so on. Then the master plan has to be developed in the spatial planning, in the urbanization of the city. The fourth is transport. We're speaking about the high-quality transport model of the city and the implementation of some of the older projects which have been developed in Mykolaiv, that is the development of river and sea transport and the transformation of Mykolaiv into the important transport and logistic hub of the whole southern region of Ukraine. The topic which is connected to that is the marine sphere. Mykolaiv should be an important port city and marine city. It's critically important to cooperate with the state level to update and implement the plan of the development of the seaport of Mykolaiv and to bring back Mykolaiv as one of the leading centers of shipbuilding with the focus on the cooperation with the Western countries. The business development and the involvement of the investments. As of today, Mykolaiv collects approximately 40% of the taxation, excluding the military ones, in comparison with the pre-war levels. So you can compare and you can see that this is the critical decrease. The businesses need to come back to Mykolaiv and we need to involve some previous businesses. We should create new ones. We need to bring back the interest of the investors to Mykolaiv, creating business clusters and providing the proper communication between the businesses and authorities in the city, and the creation of the international platforms between the businesses of Mykolaiv and the foreign partners. The next point is the youth education and culture, because without the humanitarian sphere, the full-scale recovery of Mykolaiv wouldn't be possible. The most important thing that we need to provide hope for the youth, for them to want to live in the city, not only to reconstruct the buildings, but to introduce the high-quality new educational services and to create, now we have the opportunity to create international platforms of cooperation of the youth with other cities and countries, the countries which cooperate with Mykolaiv. And a separate point which can be implemented is the memory about war, to motivate people to stay in the city and to value their city and their country. And finally, the proper governance issue, as all of the previous points can be implemented only through the efficient, accountable and transparent administration and the maximum involvement of all of the groups of the population of the city in the decision making, beginning with the businesses to the non-governmental sector and academic centers. And finally, we had an active work for several months, which is well coordinated by the Embassy of Denmark and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with some of the organizations and partners which are not shown here. And finally, we have some of the deals. This is the first delivery of dozens, and together for the region, hundreds of power generators, dozens of pumps, kilometers of pipes, modular boilers, and so on. Now we have the challenge to organize the proper transition of the satisfaction of the urgent needs into the long-term recovery and development of Mykolaiv. Thank you.
Thank you. And huge thanks to all the organizations that help the city and the oblast who are listening to us online, and to those who are engaged in the response to the current challenges. And I would like to ask some feedback. What do you think about these proposals? What do you think about the potential evaluation, the order of magnitude, the figures, the priorities in the next 2 or 3 years? Let's start with Oleksandr, and then we'll move on to the left. So, what is your feedback on the reports? Which spheres do you think are the top priority in the rebuild initiative? Well, in the previous presentations, we've seen already the main sectors. I don't want to repeat it. I just want to know that during the discussion about the master plan and the recovery plan, we have, for example, 2 schools destroyed which are one next to each other. So rebuilding both would probably be wrong. And in the place of school 48, which was big, we can just pick a bigger school, and then we can organize a school bus so that all the children would be able to use one big school. It would make more sense than rebuilding 2 schools in the same area. So there are details like this in all the areas, and the principle is, once again, build back better. So today Mykolaiv and the oblasts, they have destructions in all the areas and in all the areas of life. In Korabelny Ryan of Mykolaiv, they had this community center which has been destroyed, and there was a direct missile hit. And for example, next door to it there had been a music school. So it would make sense to rebuild the community center with the musical school integrated in it, and not to have 2 construction sites door to door. So, as the previous speakers have said, the destructions are there in all the areas, and we have to focus, of course, on the priority issues, on the survival, and also have to think through the strategic needs for the future. And the main priority for me should be having the better facilities. So it's not just the construction of the pipes and the walls. We have to also think about the whole ecosystem for the citizens, so that the cultural sites would not be the last priority. Because if we only focus on sewage, then we will not have this livable city. Because why would young people want to come back to the city where there's only good sewage and nothing else? We have to have the comprehensive approach. So I have also attended an event with the heads of German cities, and one of the mayors said that we really like Ukrainian refugees. Firstly, they really want to work. Secondly, they are well educated. And thirdly, they want to come back home. So today there are so many problems because elder people, they want to come back home, but younger people start having doubts. They maybe want to stay in the countries where they are. So we need to give the response. We need to show to the younger people that they can get back to Mykolaiv. Thank you. Indeed, this human-centered approach should be always the top priority. We have to understand this recovery and the restoration. Who is it for? And it's great to always have the person as the objective of this. So, in the next 15 minutes, I would like us to focus on finding new angles on this cooperation of different stakeholders, because it's not only a matter of having one person responsible for Mykolaiv. This is shared responsibility, and it has to be well coordinated within all the engaged stakeholders. So I would like to ask Mr. Kim, what do you think? What would be the key communication and coordination point for Mykolaiv? I will have a different question if I may. I would talk about the oblast as the head of the oblast council. Indeed, we had many communities which had been shelled, even more than the city of Mykolaiv. The oblast was shelled mostly at night. It was artillery sharing in the daytime, and we have communities where the land had been plowed twice and there is not a single intact building. So the city of Mykolaiv can be a great example which we can scale up to the region. So we have to think it through immediately. We have to do the city and scale up to the oblast. We have many interesting communities and fertile land. It can be very interesting for the business angels from other countries. So talking about the buildings which have been damaged and the assessment that has been made, it's great that international experts have been engaged in this methodology, those which can assess it all and analyze this. We've seen the building of Mykolaiv Oblast administration, and it still hurts. It still hurts, and we have not lived through this trauma, and we probably cannot provide the appraisal and evaluation on our own, because for us it's so traumatic. So it's great that international experts are engaged. And I wanted also to focus on the sources of funding for all these processes. Today you've discussed the donors and all those who have been engaged, the possible reparations that will try to have, so that Russia would be held accountable for all the crimes it's committed, so that and besides with the things which have been already evaluated and appraised, there are also intangible damages, like the health of people, and there are so many things outside of the picture, because we have to provide support to the victims, to people who suffered in the shelling. When the bus stop had been shelled, for example, one boy who was there at the bus stop, he already had 17 surgical operations. So we have to think of that, of all of that too, and we have also to try to engage the internal potential of the Ukrainian businesses in the region. So we have to have negotiations so that some of the facilities could be leased out with the condition of improvement, or maybe have some public-private partnership, or say the Ukrainian-Danish corporations which would first do the dismantling of the destroyed buildings and then will build new buildings. So it will also create jobs for Mykolaiv residents, jobs for the younger people, because the destroyed sites, yeah, they had been part of the cultural heritage next to the river. It's been the most picturesque part of Mykolaiv. And today we have also to think how we can engage our internal resource. And the residents of Mykolaiv love the city, love the oblasts, and the businesses in the region are ready to invest, to open the businesses and to do the reconstruction. So we should do this work starting now. And the reparations, well, we will definitely have areas where to spend them, because the damages are just immense in these 10 months. And I would like to express gratitude to the Kingdom of Denmark for doing these great steps. The systemic approach to the evaluation, it's really needed to be able to restart the businesses and to rebuild Mykolaiv city and the oblast. Thanks, Anna. I would like also to engage you in the discussion whether community has to be engage through these processes, because you're an elected representative of the residents of Mykolaiv. So, but before that, I would want to ask the question to Vitaly Kim. The war has shown different sides and characters, and Mykolaiv has become a stronghold in the south of Ukraine, which essentially protected other oblasts further east. And the future will show how critical that had been for the whole campaign. So this, so the defense of Mykolaiv had been really crucial. So how do you see possible reconstruction? What are the priorities there? Thank you. First of all, I'm happy that the anti-corruption initiatives are working in Ukraine, and we have the format and the foundation so that we could work transparently. And I would like to say thanks to Denmark, who is the partner of Mykolaiv region, and Denmark is doing specific steps to achieve tangible results. So in terms of the reconstruction, we've come together, we've discussed, and we, the three of us, wanted to be the focal point of decision making, to make sure that we use all possible tools for the fastest response. So this focal point will collect the information from all the communities and aggregate proposals for the investors. So this already is effective. We have the data being processed. So with regards to the policies, the Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal said that we need to try to manufacture locally. We have to have Ukrainian manufacturing. But, well, knowing economics, I understand that, well, local businesses on their own would not be able to restore that fast. We should have it facilitated by the state or international partners. So all the industries, all the businesses which had been destroyed or relocated, when there are orders or contracts from the state, they will recover faster. So I think that for the government of Denmark or for other partners, it makes sense if we offer different places for investments to consolidate money and experience, for example, in heavy industry or in light industry. So we'll do this pool of proposals. And let me make a joke. If we simply increase the salaries 3 times, people will manage to rebuild their apartments on their own. So we need to kickstart local economy to have this potential, so that it would attract the youth and so that it would generate added value in the region. And it requires some national policies. We have to provide guarantees for the investors. For example, the land. Both the city and the regional council will allocate the brown lands. They will allocate the utilities if the investor creates jobs, for example. We have been already working like this with the Ministry of Defense in terms of public procurements. We are trying to place these orders in Mykolaiv, in existing facilities, and so on. So we are creating this hub, this information hub, which will aggregate all the information from the region, and every community will be motivated to provide the most precise information to this hub to attract as many investors as possible. And on the other hand, the investors will have the list of possible opportunities, and whoever is interested in some specialized area, they would be able to find what they need. And for example, if there's an investor who knows how to build canning factories, they would be able to see which opportunities in canning industry are there. So we have to do our best to rebuild the region and to create jobs. I would like to add As Vitaly duly said, we have been coming together with Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vitaly, and essentially we created this Mykolaiv Oblast, recovery oblast, and we will turn it into this information hub. When we have the communications team, which is ready to provide the necessary information in education, in healthcare, in farming, agriculture. We know that Denmark is the 4th global meat producer. In Mykolaiv Oblast, there had been 3,100 neglected farms. So we can rebuild all that together. We can work in different directions. And there are already people who are trying to match the economy of Denmark, the economy of Mykolaiv Oblast, so that we could find growth points. And we know that in Denmark there is the great foundation, the AFU, and we would like to cooperate with this fund and to restore things together. And it has to be, of course, viable commercially. So it's not just about getting money and spending money. We want to kickstart the economy. That's why we need to restore these infrastructure facilities, and we have to have the following approach in all the areas at all the levels. Thank you. We have 5 minutes according to the agenda. Would any of the guests want to ask a question? Or maybe some of our online attendees? Yeah, I will pass the mic. Thank you. Artem Ilyin, the NV Business newspaper. My question is, so we've discussed the recovery, but how do you incorporate security measures in the restoration efforts? Because the front line is still not that far away, and this morning has shown that, well, missiles keep flying. So when you restore and reconstruct infrastructural sites, for example, or cultural sites, would you add additional security measures? Yeah, Vitaly will talk about security, but I want to also tell about risks. Well, I have my background in finance, so it's just the matter of risks. And it's there all over the country. When we restore Bucha or Irpin, Vitaly will comment on security measures, but as a finance specialist, I would think of it as the calculation of risks. So, talking about wartime economy, we have to cooperate with the National Bank and the state, because all of the reconstructions, they should be followed by national guarantees. Thank you for the question. I understand that the frontline city or region, of course, is potentially risky. So we will not, of course, invite investors with larger construction initiatives until security circulation allows. So that firstly, there's demining going and which is going on and which will be completed, and so that the Russian troops would be moved back behind Ukrainian borders. So I would say the timeline is about probably 18 months, up to 2 years, and after that period we already have the understanding when it is safe to start. But we have to prepare now. We have to prepare all the paperwork. If the investor has the intent, we have to be prepared, we have to have all the documents, and then as soon as we are clear to go, we can start.
I would like to add that it's impossible to create a separate protected part. No, it is possible. Okay. Well, the users of Telegram channels and Facebook are thinking like that. When the city mayor is doing something, you should better, for instance, acquire air defense, because now people are experts. They used to be experts in football and in asphalt, but now they are all the air defense experts. I would like to tell you that, in fact, Lots of bureaucratic procedures are existing in Ukraine, and they are even more numerous in Denmark. Let me name an example. I had to go to Lugano. I failed to leave, but still I managed to communicate with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I told him that the story about the long-term recovery is cool, but we have some of the critical urgent needs about the start of the heating season before the winter starts. And he says, okay, let me speak to my own people and I'll give you some update tomorrow. So the next day he told me, we'd like to give you for those emergency needs 13 million euro. Then some time passed, and 13 million were transformed into 7.5 because Nevco had some additional project in Kremenchuk to finalize it. And now, as of now, we have only 2 weeks till the end of the current year, and we used 3 million hryvnia. Well, not us, but the government of Denmark. And I said that we are not interested in money. Not to have any corrupt risks, any of the questions and publicly available stories. We need only to Denmark provide their own acquirement and delivery procedures for the Ukrainian party not to have anything in common with money. Daida and Nevco were involved to conduct those works, because if money somehow came to the budget, they would vanish there. It would vanish there. We should have to search for money and for equipment which Denmark sent to Mykolaiv, which was lost in Ukraine. Then we found it, but not in Mykolaiv. Well, of course, it's a joke, but seriously, that's what the head of the regional military administration was speaking about. There are lots of paperback procedures, planning procedures, bureaucratic ones, and we need it to understand that there will be the efficient, accountable and transparent use of the money, and we need to deal with those procedures now. Nobody knows what will happen later. The war will be over. Vitaly has the position which is appointed by the president. As for Hanna, we have positions which can be elected. So, shall we have other different elections? Maybe other people will be appointed. So we need the roadmap, a map, the plan of reconstruction, and we need to deal with it now for it to be comprehensible for the further generations. And we understand that not a single company would invest into the city which is in direct access of missiles S-300, which came to the territory of Mykolaiv city on the 8th of December. Kherson was liberated, but we are still accessible by the missiles. We heard the explosion, and then we heard the air raid alert, the siren, as it always happens in Mykolaiv. Let me add, procedures are cool, but we need the understanding of risk management, which can be found in each company. And as 300 missiles have the range of 150 kilometers. According to the probability theory, the mail or the farmer ship, for it to be shelled, the probability is at the same level as the shelling of the same kind of object in Rivne region. So we need to weigh in those risks when we work on the portfolio. All of that can be discussed and debated upon, and some of the different monumental issues where the shelling can be conducted, we need to balance between them. I can only add one more point about the risk management. Looking at the number of missiles which they shot against Mykolaiv and they did not achieve anything, it would be dumb to shoot again. So the motivation of the Russians to shoot against Mykolaiv is a zero motivation. Okay, this was the promotion break. I could see that there is the question here.
Є якісь ще питання в залі? У нас є змога взяти.
We have the opportunity to answer one more question, and then we will finalize the meeting.
What I said was that with your presentations today and with your leadership, I'm sure reconstruction of Mykolaiv will be in the best hands. As an anti-corruption program, we are always looking at a holistic approach to our work, how to involve civil society as the watchdogs keeping an eye on the authorities, how to involve businesses that are going to deliver. And I was just thinking whether you have any visions for having like an inclusive process in Mykolaiv around the reconstruction process. Thanks.
So that's why we created this Office of the Recovery of Mykolaiv. And it will be the platform where we will involve all of the representatives of civil society, our territorial communities all over the region, for them to be able to provide their own opinions. There will be polls and surveys. There will be a separate chapter for projects. There will have permanent communication with the communities and the involvement of each of the communities in the recovery and reconstruction. But I really love the example of our local authorities, because they have permanent public hearings about any reconstruction and recovery projects. We'd like to create the same close connection through our Office of the Recovery and Development of Mykolaiv region with those who are now abroad, because those are our people and now they need being safe over there. Well, we are happy that they are safe, but we would like them not to be that separate. We would like them to take part and to provide their own recommendations, even if they would like, for instance, some school, what should be the color of this school, which will be used for the paint. We will involve all of them. We've got lots of Telegram channels for that. So we'll try to combine that. Thanks to the skills of our city mayor in the IT sphere, he said that he will be our consultant. So I do hope that soon, during those 2 or 3 weeks or months, we will provide the close cooperation, and I think that we will communicate and will be soon boasting how and at what level it is taking place, how many requests we are getting, according to which requests, how many feedback cases we can see, and how we use them in the projects which we have for the reconstruction or the recovery in this or that community. Let me add, there will be 3 main ways. First of all, the direct contact between the community and the investor. We will directly make them in touch, not to have any additional factors. Secondly, we will exclude the human factor at all. Informational technologies, direct access to all of the procedures. And thirdly, we will be publicly discussing the projects and make them publicly aware. We should exclude the human factor and to have the direct contact. According to the master plan of Mykolaiv city, we had the public survey to ask the people what they would like to see in the recovery process of Mykolaiv. We had 13,000 of applications and forms. More than 13,000 already filled, so we would like to have 25,000. For it to be at the level of at least 5% from everybody who we'd like to hear from. But in the recovery and reconstruction issues, if we look at the wishes of the people and the expert opinion, it seems to me it is important, first of all, to base upon the experts and to keep those wishes in mind as a correcting ratio, because I'm sure that the majority of people see the recovery of Mykolaiv as it used to be before the war. And this balance wouldn't be preserved because people don't like these changes. Because in this principle of build back better, people don't want to see it. You promised us 30 years ago, but everything was still like it used to be. So it's important to understand that everybody will be involved in this process of recovery and restoration. The opinions will be heard and will be included in into the experts' conclusions. It also concerns the Danish experts of COVID Group and UNICEF, and also the contracts signed with the One Works company about the visual changes in Mykolaiv city, that is public zones and so on. Okay, let us hear the last question. Thank you. My name is Bogdan, and I would like to speak about recovery as well. We heard lots of points above, that the city and the region is relying upon the resource of the country and the international partners' resources. But what's interesting, at the level of between the cities or between the regions, do you have any ideas of cooperation that some city will help, I mean Ukrainian city will help Mykolaiv or any of the region. And who promised the most? No one promised me anything. And you? We should save ourselves. Because in fact we have friendly regions, we are helping each other, and the concentrated help for 5 regions which were at war. Mykolaiv region has this easier situation. We are concentrating on Kherson region now, but as for recovery and reconstruction we don't have dialogue because we have our own budgets. Mykolaiv budget is not that big, so we will rely upon the help of the state. The state is the one which distributes the resources considering the situation between the regions or how it's needed to be done. Let me also add, well, you know, we can't say which region promises the most. As a woman, I was dealing with humanitarian affairs in the region, and I was working with the region a lot, but I don't know. Whole Ukraine helped Mykolaiv with water, with food, with clothes, with anything. Sometimes it even drew me to tears. We didn't know even what led them to us. We saw that on the permanent basis, but we also shared it with Kherson. We can see this transit through us, and we are happy because everybody is in this cohesion. We cannot separate anyone because this is a very thorough statistical data. Every region is rich with something. But those are our people and our IDPs. We need to help them as well. So they need help themselves, but they brought everything to us. And by the way, I'm the delegate of Ukraine in the Council of Europe. I'm the representative of Ukraine. And according to our fruitful work of the delegation, there has been the platform created, city for city. And each of the heads, the village head, the settlement head, the city head, can directly connect with the city mayors of European cities and individually ask whatever this little town or settlement needs, like pharmaceuticals or I don't know, things, food, clothes. There are lots of tools. Maybe not everybody knows about them, but still everybody helped us. And whoever can see that people are not starving, but the neighbors are starving, we could share. So we can't say that someone promised less or more. I would like to add a very demonstrative point that just before this event, we communicated with Allan and Ivan Lucaria, and I also named the example of one of the Ukrainian city which was not that much shelled, or maybe shelled the least of all. But when our city was shelled, and on the 8th of December we had the missile which hit the base with vehicles. 21 unit of vehicle was affected because of this shelling, by the shelling. So Taras was dealing with the buses, because lots of the buses were affected, lots of them had to go to the armed forces of Ukraine, to the war. So we had this lack, especially when we had the power outages and our electrical vehicles were affected as well. We had 16 new trolleybuses which were affected as well. And we were thinking how we can provide the fuel for the transport. We had this lack. And in fact, it turns out that when we are speaking about Ukraine to provide some transport, the transport does not reach the ones who need it most of all. So we are not only expecting for the help from other cities, but we need even sometimes to take some help from the others. So people need to share. I'm just reminding you. We need to do that at the level of the state, of course. And we need to speak about the platform of cities for cities, thanks to which in Mykolaiv city we had lots of transport, municipal transport, which is dealing with cleaning the city, for instance. Because of mobilization, lots of transport units left for the front line. So we didn't even have vehicles for collecting leaves, dried leaves from the trees, and Dortmund city helped us. They sent us emergencies, they sent us, and Hanover was involved as well. They sent us lots of vehicles. I don't want to forget anyone. For instance, the French, Narbonne, helped us a lot. So they began helping us with their used vehicles already. Some of them really were in the bad shape, but it's better than nothing. So I support the initiative of the Ukrainian cities to give the public transport to Mykolaiv city. So if anybody is listening to us from other Ukrainian cities, you know where public transports or whatever you would like to share could be sent to. I guess this is the end for today. But this discussion is not over, and the work on recovery goes on as well. We do hope that there will be more reasons, and we won't register and document any of the damages. I don't think it's likely to happen, and today proved that. But still, one day the war is over, and the recovery will start before it is over. I thank our guests who were able to join this discussion. Thank you for watching it. If you need the report... So, okay, this is the ringtone for the life of Ukrainians this year. So if you would like to get to know what is taking place in Mykolaiv, write it down into the chat, and we will make you aware about the latest updates, and the report will share all the information. We thank all the guests, we thank you, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes, goodbye.